So Trump is called out for garnishing student loan borrower wages despite forgiving PPP loans to business owners. And so this comes from the Latin Times. So it's entitled LT. And so again, it says Trump is called out, and how he's called out on X, social media. So this is a story that was put out very recent, about 10 hours ago, by Taylor Odisio. It's a 2-minute read, so it's not too long, but you see a still photo of Donald Trump right here. So I'm going to get into this short article. The Trump administration is facing backlash as it prepares to begin garnishing the wages of more than 5 million Americans in default on their student loan, despite President Trump previously forgiving nearly $800 billion in PPP loans for small business owners. Okay, so when does this start? Next month, May the 5th, the Department of Education will begin involuntarily collecting student loan payment through the Treasury Department offset program. So the U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon claimed the move will liberate American taxpayers from having to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies. This is coming per the AP Press, News Press, Associated Press News. So social media users with and without student loans, however, condemn the government for implementing this policy amid a housing and homelessness crisis, while more than half of the Americans are living on paycheck to paycheck. And so love how the Department of Education was abolished, except for when we need it to ruin people's lives. This is what an X user. So you're going to see several comments on X of people who are voicing their opinions out loud. So this is how you know people have gotten tired, when they're even on X and they're coming out and they're saying their true feelings. So ruining the economy and taking money from people who can at least afford it, what could go wrong? This is another X user. So 5.3 million households could have their wages garnished. If they're in default, they already can't afford their bills. So if the Ed Department goes through with this, it'll destroy people's lives. This is what another person warned, and they're absolutely correct. So this is basically the same comment highlighted on X. And so there's a host, or probably like a plethora of comments. So garnishing wages for student loans that people can barely pay during the housing crisis, supply chain issues where prices are rising and shit is already tight, cost of living is out of control, and the mental toll this will take on people is blank, blank, blank. You fill in the blanks. So you would think that with all that has happened this past Easter weekend and the Pope's passing, that this administration would say, you know, we got to change our ways. Let's try to reverse some of the damage that we have caused, and we'll try to see if we can fix these things and try to see if we can make some neutral ground here and try to resolve some of these issues in a more diplomatic manner. But it isn't going that direction. It's still going in the foul direction. So going on with this article, it says here, so they're coming for my kid's job as a social worker, which she needed a college degree, which said job is shit. So which means that she can't afford to pay her student loans, and she's doing a job that literally rehomes unwanted kids. And this is how the government thanks her? So that's a comment that was made on X. And so there's probably a whole lot of more. So many social media users, they pointed out that the Trump administration, their hypocrisy after they have forgiven billions in loans for small businesses, many of which whom were received by politicians themselves and given tax cuts to the rich. So tax cuts and money handouts to the rich, debt collection for the rest of us. An ex-user pretty much voiced their opinion. So one social media user shared that 10 Republicans who benefited from the PPP loan forgiveness while blocking student debt relief. The list includes Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and Kentucky Representative, he's a Republican, Kentucky Republican, Brett Guthrie, who was forgiven nearly $5 million. The right thinks that we're parasites if you can't afford to pay your student loans during the housing and cost of living crisis, but they're totally fine with forgiving the loans or giving PPP loans that to people like the ultra rich. So only if it applies to them, it's okay to get forgiveness. So this is the list of the 10 Republicans who took advantage of PPP loan forgiveness but blocked student debt relief. And so they have the amount of money and the list here, and I'll let it sit here for a minute so you can take a look at it. But this is what's going on. So we have no winners here in this. When you do people like this is really foul. So people are already living paycheck to paycheck, maybe not even that, they're working more than one job, they're struggling to pay their bills, they're having their basic needs being questioned. Do you pay your rent or do you eat? Do you pay your medical bills or do you have a place to live? What are you going to do for food tomorrow? How much are the eggs going to be? How much is the gas going to be? And these are real serious life questions that people have. Are you going to pay your student loans or are you going to feed your children? And so I don't think that people who are ultra wealthy really understand the real struggles that regular people, everyday working class people have, and middle working class people who are now no longer the middle class as we see. So these are the things that we're experiencing on our daily lives, and then you got these people making these decisions that are basically going to kill a lot of people. So I wanted to interject and add some more things that I've recently discovered, that the funding that they cut for the research on HIV, it was reported that there might be a research of HIV, and since they cut the funding on the medicines and the advancement for that project on trying to find, getting close to finding cures, that there might be a resurge in people contracting that virus and dying from it because there's a stagnation of funding for the medicine and also the research on it. Also, here in the LA County region, there's been the presence of ICE, but not like you would think. Not all of them are dressed in those ICE uniforms. They come in plain clothes and they pose as if they're coming about business, or they're trying to, be a social worker or whatnot, and then they're trying to go on school campuses, even elementary school campuses, high school campuses, and churches, and they're looking for people. And there also have been some emails, people who are not naturalized citizens, people who are born citizens of the American state here in the U.S., have been getting emails threatening that they have 7 days or less to be here. They have to self-deport out of the country. So this is getting real, y'all. So anybody thinks that they're winning, you're not winning in any of this. So I feel like something really bad is going to happen because the protests are getting bigger, they're getting louder, and nobody should be trying to encourage people not to protest, not at a time like this, because I feel like this is more, other than the administration, it's more like we're living under a regime, and it's going to get violent. I fear that we are going to see some things that we've never seen before, because when you take off the lifeline of people, their basic needs like food, housing, clothing, survival. Survival mode kicks in, and it can be chaotic. And I feel like this is also deliberate, and we're seeing a very big shift here. The ultra rich and ultra wealthy versus the people who are just barely hanging on by a thread and don't have a lot of money, and you're working paycheck to paycheck, if that. And so I don't know what's going to happen definitely, but I do know for sure this part, it isn't going to get better if it keeps going like this. I couldn't imagine 4 years of this, and what more could you do to people until people finally find a breaking point? That's what I'm saying. So to go on with this article, and then I'll close. The upcoming policy shift is the latest in a series of efforts by the Trump administration to squeeze student loan borrowers. So last month, the president signed an executive order to limit the public service loan forgiveness program. That allows public employees to be eligible for a loan forgiveness after 10 years of service. So if you're working in a job and you've done public service here in America, and you could be somebody that's in a government job, and you've done the service and you've done 10 years or more, now you're eligible for a student loan forgiveness to some degree. But he's pushing back on that. So the administration is also moving towards selling federal loans to private lenders, which have previously kept millions of borrowers in debt. So what are your voice of opinion on this? Because I don't see that this is getting any better, and we have no winners in this. And at the end of the day, we're a human race. I know race has been an issue in a lot of this, but when you look at this, it's going to hurt a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what race or color you're from. Even poor white people are going to suffer. People who are MAGA people who voted for this guy is going to suffer. People who maybe you still think he's the best president, you're not aware of what's going on yet, but you're going to feel it in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and maybe less than that. As soon as these things start really taking effect, if they haven't already, and some of it has already started for some people, are already feeling the pain and they're voicing their opinions. And I'm seeing a lot of videos coming up, and it's not videos that you would normally think of people that are just oppositional towards the Trump administration, but these are people who actually voted for Trump, who are now saying that they regret their votes, or they regret that this had gotten out of hand like it has. You would think after, unfortunately, the passing of the Pope this past weekend, that this administration would say, let's change this, let's try to fix things, let's try to ease the pain of what these people are going through, and let's try to reverse our course of what we've been doing. Nope. We're seeing this right here. We heard him on the news, Trump saying, I love you all. I'm going to say this to close this out. Take a good look at this, what has happened so far. These are the people that have gotten forgiveness. But what about our students that have worked so hard to be good citizens in the country and tried to have respectable jobs? And you took out a loan, none other but to just be somebody that is a good civilian that had worked and do some good service in the country, and then this is how you're repaid. And then here you got this right here. It's not about what you say, saying that you love everybody. It's about what you're doing, and about the reflection of what people are feeling and what they're experiencing in their lives. So when you're taking jobs away from people, when you're taking money away from people, the only money they have to feed their families, and when you're garnishing checks of people who've been struggling, they're living paycheck to paycheck, maybe one medical problem could arise, maybe one job loss, and then they're out on the street. And so for people to call Trump out, I think they're doing the right thing, and they're voicing their opinions, and the protests are getting bigger, and they're going to grow. Just like the homelessness is growing, the voices are getting louder, and people are getting tired. And so now, what are you going to do to try to resolve the issue? Are you going to continue to cut people's jobs and cut people's money and cut people's livelihood, threaten people of their existence in the country? And then after we saw what happened to this guy he was wrongfully deported to Venezuela, and now they're saying, oops, we can't bring him back. I don't think this is going in a good place. So voice your opinions and your thoughts. And no matter what background you're from, no matter what culture you're from, if you see wrong is wrong, you know this is wrong. But anyway, on that note, stay safe.